you?
I am great. How are you?
Good. You holding up so far?
Doing great.
Okay, good. Now, first of all, you look great.
Thank
Your
you.
hair looks great. And I want to say that because sometimes I picture your hair. When I picture your hair, I picture it a little different. This is a photo of the way I usually picture your hair. Now, this is... Are you just a busy man?
That was after the electric shock.
Oh, yes, of course.
First up, she is the senior senator from Massachusetts and best-selling author of A Fighting Chance, Senator Elizabeth Warren. Oh, what a thunderous applause for you. How you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Wow. Look at that, a standing O. Look at that, a standing O here, all right? Well, that's the same guy who loved me, so, you know, the guy loves everybody. He's on ecstasy, it's okay. He's just in a very loving mood. All right. Well, I thank you so much for being here, as always. I know you're ever more busy because you're a senator now, but you have a book, and I want to talk about that, and it's a very interesting book. You talk about your family history. I didn't realize they went through the Depression.
Yeah.
The Dust Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
And really, they were helped back on their feet by government help, which I know is a bad, concept for some parties in this country. Do you think that kind of help exists in this environment we live in?
You know, I think that what's happened is coming out of the Great Depression, we really developed the idea that we didn't have to have a boom and bust economy where people got wiped out, that we could really start pitching in together. We could have some tough rules on Wall Street. We could have some tough rules for the banks. And we could start building something together. And we did it. We gave kids better opportunities for education. We built more infrastructure, the TVA, right? Made all those investments. We made all those investments in research. We built a future for this country, and we did it together. And I will say, I wrote this book, A Fighting Chance, out of gratitude, because I grew up in an America that was investing in its kids, that was helping build a future for its kids. And we've lost our way from that. We've turned in a different direction. We now have a government that works for millionaires and billionaires and Fortune 500 companies, but it's leaving real families, real people behind. And so what we got to do is we got to get out there and we've got to be willing to fight back, to take this country back.
Well, well, thank you as always for coming into the Lion's Den. I know you know they're predisposed not to like what you're going to say. And tonight, they're really not going to like what you say. You wrote a book about immigration.
Yes.
And you know, we're gonna get to you very soon. Because I asked if you would mind if we booked the congressman with you, and you're okay with that.
I said fantastic.
Fantastic. Okay, you have an honest disagreement. So it's good publicity that Donald Trump was sort of saying what you were saying.
Yes.
Mexicans, rapists, beheading.
Yes.
But what I find odd is that you say in the book over and over that it's very hard to get facts, to get actual stats, and yet you come to conclusions like they're rapists.
Well, I described that in the chapter. This wasn't going to be the original book. This was, immigration was just going to be a couple of chapters. And then when the information wasn't there, it drove me crazy. For one thing, I go through how the information is being hidden, both by the government and by the media. But there are ancillary facts. For example, as you can see in that chapter, New York State keeps a list of prisoners by nationality, and there it is. You have 1,000 Dominicans, you have 1 Dane, and he's probably a Muslim. We have the most wanted list.
But we're not on the border with Denmark. There are less Danes here.
Well, but we don't need to take people just because they're on our border. We didn't used to take people just because they live within walking distance. We used to have an immigration policy where we would choose the best in the world, and that was changed. This is a fairly recent policy.
We would choose the whitest in the world. That's
your audience. No, we wouldn't, but look, the pre-1970 immigrants were more educated, made more money, were more likely to buy houses, and 30% of them went home. Now no one goes home, they go on welfare, and they are far more likely to be on welfare than the native population. I think a nation's policies should be concerned with the people already here, and that includes the immigrants who came last year and the year before. It should be people who live here benefit, not to become the, battered woman's shelter of the world, where we're bringing in the hardest cases and, the wife beaters and the single mother with 8 kids.
Again,
and
how do we...
Can I attempt to answer your question, Ms. Coulter? Because I think one of the things that we have to do in this country is to stop lying. We were earlier talking and touched on the issue of slavery. Ever since the forcible removal of millions of African Americans from chattel slavery, this country has been importing new slave labor.
That's right.
Because this country wants and runs and is fueled by cheap labor.
That's
whether it was
right.
Puerto Ricans, whether it was people we drew from Mexico to come here and continue to do so because the people who are on your side, big agriculture.
Not my side,
big
but I agree.
agriculture, the big corporate interests who want people to come.
Well, she does say
Once
that.
I
we
agree
bring
with
people
you.
Here, okay, well, once we bring people here, people's family members, people whose families are born here, are American. Both my parents are immigrants. So I take great exception to any kind of negative characterization of them. I had one come from Africa, my mother came from the Caribbean. When they came here, they came for the same reason that everyone does, for opportunity, for education. And when they're contributing to our society and they have a child here, like me, I'm a first-generation American, and I'm fully American, despite the fact that both my parents were born outside of this country.
Okay.
Let's bring out Caitlin. She is a contributing editor for the Atlantic Monthly, whose new cover story is That's Not Funny, How Today's College Students Can't Seem to Take a Joke. Please welcome Caitlin Flanagan. Hey, Caitlin. How you doing?
Hi, great.
Pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Well, what a time to have the name Caitlin, huh?
It is, really. I'm going by Bruce now.
It probably wasn't a problem for like the first 20-something years of your
There
life.
were other problems with it, but this is a new dimension.
I know. Okay. Well, we won't talk about that. I really wanted to have you on because when I read your article, I said, oh my gosh, this is the person who's going to continue this discussion. I didn't start. Some other people did. I've mentioned it before about how college kids have no sense of humor. And then Jerry Seinfeld said something. Chris Rock chimed in. Larry the Cable Guy said, I don't play colleges anymore. They're too politically correct. You delve into why. So I really want you to explain that. Why are the college students so politically correct?
Why they're so politically correct now? Well, they're the inheritors of 30 years of identity politics, and that's part of the problem.
What is that?
That means that, instead of saying we all have general principles by which we live and seek to sort of understand our lives, that I'm going to stand up for the feminist cause, I'm going to stand up for a particular racial or ethnic cause, and I'm going to fiercely guard that and completely stand on the side of that issue.
Tribal.
Yes, it is rather
We're
tribal.
So tribal, aren't we?
And I think that, I don't blame the kids for this. A lot of people really demonize the kids.
It's the parents, right?
I think so, because, when kids come to college, when they come to any school, they are, by definition, they're ignorant. They don't know anything yet. And it is the moral obligation of their teachers, of the adults who work in that institution, to teach them something, to relieve them of this great burden of ignorance. But there are so many professors who have completely abdicated that position and have just cravenly ceded to whatever these poor kids who don't know anything yet, what they come and say, they're just reinforced by the professors. And the whole system is now being run by these kids who are paying the tuitions that pay the salaries.
Well, that's a great point that you make. Conservatives certainly don't have a monopoly on, I think, being unhelpful in the national debate. Good example this week. Okay, for the second week in a row, a Democrat, last week it was Bernie Sanders, this week it was Hillary Clinton, got a bit of an earful from the Black Lives Matter folks. We talked about it last week with our guest, Talib Kawil. Okay, so now I didn't say this last week, but I'll say it this week. There are people who say the phrase should be all lives matter. I disagree. That implies that all lives are equally at risk, and they're not. Black Lives Matter is the right. But I want to read what Hillary Clinton said in response when she was being asked about this. She said, what am I supposed to do about it? In politics, if you can't explain it and you can't sell it, it stays on the shelf. I don't believe you change hearts. I believe you change laws, you change allocation of resources, you change the way systems operate. This is a fundamental difference between a lot of fuzzy-headed liberals who just don't get it, and people like Barney Frank, you perhaps, yes, not perhaps, who understand, because you're in there, you understand you have to actually change laws. You can't just change how people think.
Right, there's a difference between a hashtag and actual legislation.
Except don't. I think that's true. I think that, except that as progressives, and I describe myself as a progressive, but it's not good enough for me to be progressive in my rhetoric, but not to have that acted out in my policy. And so, for example, for a Bernie Sanders to talk about Black Lives Matter and have a conversation about income inequality, you also have to recognize that it was banks that foreclosed on black people's homes in a different way than they did other people, and incorporate that into our rhetoric. And I think that that's the challenge that progressives are having, and that, frankly, white progressives are having, where they see a disconnect between the Black Lives Matter movement, and it is a social movement. It isn't just an accident.
But Occupy Wall Street was a movement too, and nothing got done because they don't know how to take it to the level where shit does get done and changes.
I think they changed the conversation. Occupy Wall Street changed the entire conversation around income inequality, around what we're doing with our, with banks and foreclosure and credit. They changed the conversation.
But they're not going to do it.
Very rich. Let them take care of Crimea. That's their backyard, not ours.
We make everything our problem,
right?
Except for taking care of the people in this country.
Right.
You know, to me, one of the biggest threats is the sense of hopelessness that is going on in this country with regards to community and police relations in the African American community. And the fact that, you know, America's chocolate citizens are crying out yet again in terms of the injustices. And when people give up on a system, we have a problem. And we're seeing that hopelessness.
But you know why that is? Because I think it's because campaign politics. They can't. The Republicans can't run on the economy because Mitt Romney said that he would get unemployment down to 6% by 2016.
Yeah.
And Obama got it down to 5.5.
Yeah.
Well,
so it's kind of hard to run on that.
I promise
So
you,
what do they have? They always have the Trump card, scare the shit out of people.
Yeah.
War is always the Republicans' trump card, and it works.
Yeah, I promise you the Republicans are going to run on the economy. With 11% unemployment, when you take into account people who are looking for jobs and are part-time jobs or have checked out, it's still 11%. That's why 2/3 of the American people think we're on the wrong track.
But Republicans are...
2/3 of the people, by the way, think we're still in a recession.
Obama's weakest numbers are on foreign policy. He's bounced over 50%, but on foreign policies in the 30s.
Like 36%.
Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State for 4 years under Obama. The Republicans see that that is going to be one of their easy ways.
Because Americans understand foreign policy.
Not at all.
So well.
But I guess if the earth stops spinning, you're going to blame that on Hillary Clinton too. I mean, get over it. I mean, a lot of these folks that are running for president right now on the Republican side are some of them are in the Congress right now. Some of them were former governors. And what in the heaven did they do to lift and to make things better?
Well, I think
they had power.
In your home state, for example, the unemployment rate's been lower than national level since Kasich has been in, right?
But a lot of the tech...
You know, Perry, you could attack Perry, but Perry was a job machine down in Texas for a long time.
Are you kidding me? Are you? I mean, seriously?
Well, look at the
about
numbers.
1/4 of the children are living in poverty right now.
I'm talking about jobs. 30% of the net new jobs created in America were created down in Texas. So you can criticize him for other things, but in terms of job creation, Republicans have a pretty
part of that is
story.
because he poached those jobs from other states, which you can't really do when you're president.
No,
it doesn't. When you're president, you have to think about all the states.
Yeah. But there are huge issues out there which people understand. Stagnant wages for 10 years in terms of inflation, just median income stagnant for 10 years.
Texas
during the Obama years, by the way, and Bush years. So listen, let's get away from one party or the other and let's fix the problem.
Right.
But let's
focus on rising.
But would you not
incomes.
agree that a lot of these folks who are running for president right now, particularly on the Republican side of the ledger, had opportunities and spaces to do those things, and they have not done it. They whisper sweet nothings in the ears of the American people, and then they want to be the president of the United States. That doesn't.
But you can say the same thing about Hillary Clinton and foreign policy, right? So the question is, like, where are we going from here? How are we going to get a growing economy? How are the people in this audience, both electronically and physically, how are they going to get a good job where they're going to be able to afford to have their own home? There's 20 million American families that pay more than 50% of their income in rent. They don't have enough money to save to buy a home.
Part of it would be raise the minimum wage.
Amen to
but none of the Republicans who are decrying these days the wealth gap are then for raising the minimum wage.
Now, I've been on both.
So it's kind of crazy.
People need a lot more than minimum wage.
That polls
yes, they do. But that would start. I mean, you know, there's a lot of people who just live close to like how animals live. How can you live if on $7.25
I
an
come
hour?
from one of those families, Bill, and I know what it's like. You know, I had a mother who died at the age of 42 years old, aneurysm burst in her brain, and she died on the system of welfare. And nobody says that when I grow up I want to be poor, I want to be on the system. Woo, food stamps, that's the life for me.
Sweet deal.
Everybody has hopes and dreams, and we need to focus more of that attention. You know, we got to watch ISIL and everything that's going on in the world, but we need to focus more of our attention on helping Americans live out their greatest greatness. Let's make some investments here in our country.
Okay, we're here, back on YouTube. What does the red square on your outfit signify, Alexis?
So this means we're all in the red. In other words, we're all in debt. It's a symbol that came out of Montreal when they had the student protests against tuition hikes. But the Debt Collective, which is a group that I work with, has sort of taken it on because the tie that binds the 99% is that we're all in debt.
But that's usually a conservative talking.
Well, we're taking it over. We're reappropriating it.
So we can work on something together.
I'll get you a red square.
But I mean, you do, I'm sure you do understand, you realize, of course, someone as steeped in the politics as you, that that's the reason the conservatives give for why we can't do any social spending. We're too in debt already. How can we give unemployment insurance to people? We're in debt. Everything is we're in debt. We can't do anything.
Well, but they conflate this idea that government is the same as an individual, right? And the government has to balance its budget and tighten its belt. But I also think that the reason that we as individuals are in so much debt is because the government has been shrinking and turning itself over to the private sector. And, you know, we don't have basic services. We don't have free education like other parts of the country. And so we're trying to push back on that and say, look, debt is the way that Wall Street occupies our lives. So what would happen if instead of unions for workers, we had unions for debtors? And we're trying to build unions for debtors.
Are both political parties guilty of policing free speech? Now, here's the place I've been with you. I mean, my closing thing last week was, and I've said this before about the liberals, they're shutting down free speech and too much political correctness. I would say they're the guiltier party. Would you? I'm sure you would agree.
But perhaps I will surprise you by saying yes, both sides are guilty. I think the argument we make in our book, End of Discussion, is that this kind of stuff is sort of born on campus, no right-wing organization, and sort of proliferated through the media and weaponized in Washington, has gotten to a point where it's like we can't just even see things that are offensive to us or deal with them and move on as adults. I think the Confederate flag issue is interesting because I think it's right and smart to take it down from government-endorsed areas, but I do think the impulse to eradicate this symbol from American life in every way, shape, or form, which it feels like is what's going on, is an odd impulse.
I agree. People should have the right to have a Confederate flag in their house. That's so un-American. Carly Fiorina says it's the liberals' fault. And she does. She's an environmentalist, wouldn't let us build any new reservoirs.
Yeah, Obama melted the snowpack.
That's right. Alex, will the Clinton cash scandal continue to dog Hillary's campaign? I don't know if it's dogging it now.
Yeah, the polling shows that she's gotten even stronger, and so if that's what dogging is, I'm sure the Clintons would bring it on if that's what it looks like.
Do you think that's because the Clintons have become sort of like John Gotti, the Teflon Don? I mean, at some point, oh, you were accepting money. We're real surprised by that.
I think
we kind of thought that was the case.
I think this points to a larger systemic failure in our political system, which is the idea of money coming in from unsavory groups and maybe having a disproportionate influence on the political system is now,
But don't you think?
And that's not good.
So listen, how about this, Alex? Whether or not we're talking about Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky, Anthony Weiner, Tom.
Did you really just bring up Monica Lewinsky?
Yeah, Tom Brady, and
I mean, really? Like, is that? Are we going to start hearing about?
No,
Lewinsky
I'm going to tell you
now?
why. I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you
Seriously?
why. I'm going to tell you. Listen.
Rule of law, Alex. He lied.
Yeah,
Rule of law.
And not in golf. In golf, if you have Lewinsky on the field, I'm sorry.
Wait a second.
All of these cases. All of these cases. In my opinion, and I'm genuinely curious as to yours, on all of these cases, from Bill Clinton to Tom Brady to Hillary Clinton on this, isn't the lying the greater sin? The sociopathic lying, the way Anthony Weiner can look into a camera and go, wasn't me.
It's called politics. I mean, everybody, like...
But wait, isn't it matter what you lie about? Isn't lying about blowjobs way less important than lying about the things Republicans lie about? Like whether... Like global warming isn't real. Do you think
or weapons of mass destruction?
Ted Cruz, who has degrees from Princeton and Harvard, do you really think he thinks global warming is a hoax, or does he know it's true, but he tells that to the rubes who vote for him? Because they believe it. Which is a worse lie?
I genuinely like debating you. One of your great failings is your inability to see the intellectual response in the global warming debate. The response which is, you can't predict the future.
Heather, which candidate for president will have the most aggressive anti-party poverty agenda?
That's a very good question. So I think that Secretary Clinton actually gets a bum rap on issues like these. I don't think that she is necessarily the most progressive when it comes to challenging corporate power, but I think when it comes to, I mean, her first job was at the Children's Defense Fund, right? When it comes to these issues of poverty, these kitchen table economic issues, I think she's got a crusader's heart on this. I actually do.
Well, I don't.
No, I
don't know about Crusader's heart, but yes, I agree. I don't worry about her on domestic issues with the left. I worry about her being too right on foreign policy. That's where I worry about her, is that she's a kind of a hawk, and I would a smattering of putting green applause.
One thing, the few things that almost all economists I know of, and the left and right agree, is free trade is a win-win.
There's no such thing as free trade. Like, that's just a slogan. That's like saying the death tax or something like that.
Clean coal.
Right, exactly. Clean coal.
Trade is a win-win.
Right. Trade is great. We're trading all the time. We're trading barbs, you and I. It's great.
Freely.
It's just what matters is the rules and how you write them, and frankly, who gets to write the rules. And the problem has always been with our version of free trade that corporations and their lobbyists get to write the rules, and it's cost American jobs every single time. And it's not made life better in the manufacturing countries where they're, dying in sweatshops.
So why do you think Obama is so for it?
So I actually think that there's a piece about this, about China, that is geopolitical, that is not about, jobs and economics at home, but this is actually about showing our biggest competitor that we have relationships with these nations in its area. That's a big piece of it that I don't think he can sort of say and lead with, but I think that is a major piece of it.
Maybe he had to make this bargain to get the climate deal with China. Presidents do things behind closed doors we don't know. And sometimes we're glad they do.
Greetings, Cleveland, Ohio, and everyone who has come from every part of this great state. It is a tremendous sight to see so many of you here in the Woolstein Center at the Cleveland State University. We have come here tonight to feel the burn. When I say feel, you say burn. Feel. Feel. When I say feel, you say burn. Feel. Feel. All right now. We are at a critical moment in our nation's history. And the fact that Senator Bernie Sanders is answering the call to stand up for working class folks and middle class folks in this country to say enough is enough is enough is enough. The countless folks who are in the working poor who work 2 and 3 jobs at a time and they still can't make ends meet. Enough is enough is enough. For young people who are saddled by debt in this country, Senator Sanders says enough is enough is enough. Too many Americans in this country are being deprived of health care. The senator says enough is enough is enough. And for the women in this country who are being deprived of their right to control their own bodies, Senator Sanders says enough is enough is enough. And ladies, can I just say this? We want our whole damn dollar. Enough is enough is enough. Or what about a justice system that is unjust to African Americans and our Hispanic brothers and sisters? Enough is enough is enough. You will not be surprised to know that Senator Sanders has a racial justice plan that affirms the value of people of color and wants to do away with the 4 types of violence that is waged against them: physical, political, legal, and economic. Enough is enough is enough. Senator Sanders is running this race. Him and Mrs. Sanders, they are running this race. Senator has 4 children and 7 grandchildren, and he wants them to inherit a world where they can live their greatest greatness. He is running this race for your children and your children and your children and my children. Enough is enough is enough. Senator Sanders wants everybody to be able to live their measure of the American dream. He is sick and tired of an economy that is rigged. Enough is enough is enough. Now I'm going to tell you something, folks. Senator Sanders can win this race. Don't listen to the pundits. He can and he will win this race. He will win this race. Because when I think about Senator Sanders, I think about a public servant for our time. He has been doing the work of the people his entire political career. He has been steady in his commitment to folks who live in this country. He is going to get it done. Senator Sanders lives on his principles. He is going to get it done. So if all of us put a little extra on our ordinary, extraordinary things will begin to happen in this country. I know it and I believe it, which is why I am feeling the burn. Now, we need you all to do some very important things. Each and every person in this room, you are a part of making the political revolution real. And we have to get out here and make sure that we register people to vote, that we are out there voting in great numbers, and we make it known that Senator Bernie Sanders will be the next president of these United States of America. He is a man of principle, and I applaud the senator for taking this on. So I want to leave you with 3 things. Number 1, I believe that the creator of this great universe has given us 2 hands, one to reach forward and one to reach back, lifting as we climb. That we can't ask other folks to do more for us than we are willing to do for ourselves. And lastly, in In the words of my grandmother, who was born in 1913, my grandmother could not read or write, but she could count her money. And she kept her money in the Southern Ladies Bank and Trust. When I asked my grandmother, what does it take to be successful in life? She said, my dear granddaughter, all you need are the three bones, the wishbone, the jawbone, and the backbone. She said the wishbone will keep you hoping and praying because hope is the motivator, but the dream is the driver. The reason why Senator Sanders is running this race is because he knows that the hopes and the dreams of everyday citizens are wrapped in his leadership to push this country forward for all folks. My grandmother said that the jawbone will give you courage to speak truth to power, or in the words of Dantes, the hottest places of hell are reserved for those who in times of great moral crisis choose neutrality. Sisters and brothers, we have a great moral crisis on our hands, and we cannot be neutral. We will not be neutral. Anything unless you have the supercalifragilisticexpialidocious bone, which is the backbone, because the backbone will keep us standing through all of our trials and our tribulations. And in this life, we will go through some stuff, but you cannot have a testimony without a test. We are being tested. So feeling the burn is like when you have a good workout and the burning sensation you feel is proof that you are getting stronger. That is what Senator Sanders is doing for our party, and that is what he is doing for this nation. He is making us stronger. He is making us stronger. And if you want a Democratic Party that is super fierce and ultra committed and brings justice and equality and brings us all together, young and seasoned, black, white, Hispanic, Native American, Asian, all of us together, we must work and get the vote out. We must feel the burn, Cleveland. Feel the burn, Ohio. Feel the burn, America. Feel the burn. Senator Sanders is the public servant for our time. So when I say feel, you say burn. Feel. Feel. When I say feel, you say burn.